She walked into the dart tournament alone. Quiet. Unnoticed. Mocked by everyone in the room. No one knew her name. No one expected her to stay. Until she picked up a dart. And hit a perfect bullseye on her very first throw. But that was just the beginning. What followed left the crowd frozen in shock. Old secrets resurfaced. A man long believed to be dead walked through the door. And the quiet woman everyone laughed at turned out to be the key to a mystery the town had buried for years. Who was she really? What happened to her husband? And why did she return now? Stay with us until the very end. Because the truth behind her perfect shot will leave you speechless. Watch the full video now. You won't believe how this story ends. The town dart tournament was a big deal in Cedar Bluff. Everyone came. Even if you were not playing, you watched. The community center buzzed with energy that Friday night. The smell of popcorn and sweat hung in the air. Old trophies glinted under the flickering fluorescent lights. Near the registration table stood a woman no one recognized. She wore a faded blue cardigan and soft-soled shoes. Her hair was tied in a loose bun. And she clutched a small purse like it was armor. People stared. Then they started whispering. She lost? Must be looking for the bingo hall. Maybe she thought this was book club night. Laughter followed her wherever she walked. But she said nothing. Just watched. And waited. The host finally called her name. First-time player. Martha Delaney. A pause. Then more laughter. Martha stepped forward quietly. Her opponent? Tommy Vex. Local champion. Tattooed arms, cocky grin, beer in hand. He winked at her. Hope you brought a broom, sweetheart. You're going to need it to sweep up your pride. The crowd roared. Martha smiled. Barely. She reached into her purse. Pulled out a small wooden case. Unsnapped it. 3 brass darts lay inside. Worn. Polished. Old. She stepped up to the line. Tommy yawned loudly. Try not to break a hip, Granny. The air thickened. People leaned in. Martha raised the dart. Her hand was steady. Eyes focused. A heartbeat passed. Then. Thud. The first dart hit the bullseye. Dead center. Silence. No laughter. Only the low hum of the vending machine. Tommy blinked. Someone coughed. She picked up the second dart. Thud. Another bullseye. Gasps now. People stood up. Phones began recording. Tommy's grin vanished. His beer sloshed onto the floor. Martha raised the third dart. Held it in the air. For a moment, she froze. Something flickered in her eyes. Not nerves. Something else. A memory? Or a warning? Then. Thud. Perfect. 3 perfect shots. Triple bullseye. Unbroken. The crowd erupted. Tommy turned red. Then pale. He stepped back, muttering, who is she? A man near the back whispered. Isn't that the woman whose husband used to be the league champion? Another replied. Yeah, until he disappeared. Years ago. Martha walked off the line. Calm. Graceful. People parted like water around her. The host stammered into the mic. Okay, that was, perfect round by Miss Delaney. Tommy sat down without a word. His hands shook. Later, someone asked Martha. Where did you learn to throw like that? She looked at them. Eyes cool. Voice quiet. My husband taught me. He said darts were all about control. Precision. And timing. Another player spoke up. Wait, was your husband Charles Delaney? She nodded once. Everyone fell silent. Because Charles Delaney was a name they remembered. He had vanished. No one found him. Not even his body. Martha's eyes swept the crowd. She smiled again. Soft. And eerie. Then she walked to the scoreboard. She picked up the chalk. Wrote one word next to her name. Returned. The room fell into a hush. That single word, returned, seemed to echo off the walls. Tommy looked at the board, then at Martha. His lips parted, but no words came out. Others exchanged nervous glances. Martha turned and walked slowly to the back of the room. Each step measured. Deliberate. As if she was counting them. The host cleared his throat. That concludes round 1. Players, prepare for the next draw. But no one moved. All eyes followed Martha. She sat at a table near the exit. Pulled a handkerchief from her sleeve. Polished her darts. One by one. A woman finally dared to approach her. Karen Dobbs. The town librarian. She leaned down and whispered. Was it true? What happened to Charles? Martha looked up. Her expression was unreadable. Then, with a slow nod, she answered. He lied to me. About everything. Karen straightened. Uncomfortable. I remember, the night he vanished. You were in the hospital. Martha's voice turned cold. Concussion. Broken wrist. Bruised ribs. Karen paled. You said you slipped in the shower. Martha looked her in the eyes. I did not say that. Everyone assumed. The realization spread like wildfire. People whispered. Heads turned. The pieces clicked together. Tommy Beck stood again. Nervous. He approached Martha slowly. Hey, listen. About earlier. I was just joking, all right? Just some friendly banter. Martha did not look at him. She continued polishing her third dart. You remind me of Charles. Tommy's laugh was strained. Huh, yeah? Well, he was a legend, right? Martha's voice dropped. No. He was loud. Arrogant. Cruel when no one watched. But he had perfect aim. She finally looked up. Eyes sharp as the tip of her dart. Until he missed. Tommy froze. What do you mean? Martha stood slowly. Held his gaze. I gave him one chance. One final throw. Just like I gave you. Tommy stumbled back. Hands up. Hey now, this is just a game, alright? A fun night. That's all. She stepped forward. The crowd held their breath. Then the host's voice cracked through the tension. Next round. Martha Delaney versus Greg Thompson. The spell broke. Tommy backed away, nearly tripping over a chair. Greg, a gentle-faced hardware store owner, swallowed hard. His name sounded like a death sentence. But Martha turned. Walked calmly to the line again. Darts in hand. Someone whispered behind her. She never missed a single shot. Another muttered. She never raised her voice either, until the night he vanished. The game resumed. But no one cheered anymore. They watched. Quiet. Waiting. As Martha raised her arm again. A storm seemed to gather in the silence. And somewhere. Outside the building. A dog howled. Martha did not flinch. Not at the howling. Not at the silence. Not at the dozens of eyes fixed on her. She lined up her first shot against Greg. He stood across from her, stiff as stone. Sweat beaded along his hairline. His fingers fidgeted at his side. Martha's dart flew. Thud. Bullseye. Again. The room stayed silent. As if applause would somehow trigger something dark. something hidden beneath her calm smile. Greg stepped up. Tried to focus. He exhaled hard and threw. It landed. Off-center. Barely on the board. A few people exchanged glances. No one dared laugh. Round 2. Martha lifted the second dart. She held it a second longer this time. Her eyes locked on the board. Then slowly, drifted toward the window. Outside, in the dark, something moved. A shadow. Or a person. No one could tell. Thud. Another bullseye. Greg swallowed audibly. He tried again. Missed entirely. The dart clattered to the floor. Martha remained motionless. Her presence now felt heavier. As if the temperature in the room had dropped. People whispered behind cupped hands. She has not been seen in years. She only showed up after they drained that pond behind her house. You think they found something? The third dart in her hand gleamed faintly under the overhead lights. She held it up. Paused. Spoke without turning around. Sometimes you bury things. But the ground never forgets. The room went still. The host's smile faltered. His voice cracked. Martha, you okay to finish the round? She nodded. Slowly. Greg stepped back without being asked. She threw. Thud. Perfect again. People barely breathed. Greg did not try to throw his final dart. He walked off the line, face pale, hands shaking. The scoreboard was updated. But no one cared about the numbers anymore. All eyes were on Martha. She turned away from the board and walked toward her table again. But this time, a man stepped into her path. Sheriff Ron Holbrook. Big frame. Broad shoulders. The law in Cedar Bluff for over 20 years. Martha, he said gently. I need to ask you something. She looked at him. Expression calm. Unchanged. What did they find in the pond, he asked. Soft. Careful. Martha glanced around. The room was silent again. Waiting. She took her time answering. A reminder. Ron frowned. A reminder of what? Her voice dropped. Low. I see. Of what happens when people forget who they are dealing with. A hush fell. Ron stepped back, uncertain now. And then, from the back of the room, a loud bang. The back door slammed open. A man stood in the frame. Tall. Lean. Gray streaks in his beard. Eyes cold and sunken. Gasps echoed. Someone whispered. No. That can't be. But it was. Charles Delaney. Alive. Or something close to it. He stepped inside. Eyes scanning the crowd. People backed away. Martha turned to face him. Her face remained calm. But her hand slid toward the inside of her coat pocket. She whispered. Some things should have stayed buried. Charles took another step forward. His boots echoed on the tile. Each footfall sounded like thunder in the silence. His eyes locked on Martha. He smiled. But it was not warmth. It was something else. Tight. Hollow. Martha, he said. Like it was a curse. Or a memory. Or both. You were supposed to be gone. Gasps rippled through the room. Sheriff Ron raised a hand toward his holster. But Martha shook her head. No need, she said softly. This is not his moment. It is mine. Charles laughed. Dry. Crooked. You always did love the stage. Martha stepped forward. One slow step. Then another. You were never supposed to come back, she said. And yet. Charles's eyes narrowed. They dug too deep, didn't they? Found something that should have stayed hidden? Martha did not flinch. They found your belt buckle. A murmur surged through the crowd. Charles grinned wider. So they did. He stepped further into the light. His face was thinner. Older. But unmistakable. Tommy Vex stumbled backward, whispering. He was dead. I swear, he was dead. Sheriff Ron stepped between them. Voice tense. I saw the report. They ruled it accidental. A slip near the edge of the pond. Martha kept walking. Closer to Charles. He slipped, she said. That part was true. She stopped just a few feet from him. They stared at each other. Like two old ghosts who had unfinished business. Charles tilted his head. You pushed me. Martha's gaze did not waver. You raised your hand to me. She paused. Again. The crowd froze. Charles chuckled, bitter. And you learned to fight back. I learned to aim. Her fingers tightened inside her coat. Charles raised his hand slowly. Mocking surrender. You gonna throw another dart, Martha? Or is this round over? She stepped even closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Not all wounds bleed. Sheriff Ron tried to intervene. All right, both of you. But Martha raised a hand. Still calm. Still composed. She pulled something from her coat. A letter. Yellowed. Folded. Torn at the edges. She handed it to Ron. It is a confession, she said. He wrote it. Before he disappeared. Before I pushed back. Charles's smile faded. His jaw tensed. You were never supposed to keep that. I kept everything, she said. Even the bruises. Ron opened the letter. Read a few lines. His eyes widened. Is this real? He asked. Martha nodded. Dated 2 days before he vanished. Admitting everything. The beatings. The threats. The missing money from the league fund. He was planning to run. The crowd turned. Some with shock. Some with guilt. Martha looked at them. All of you laughed when I walked in. None of you remembered what he did. You forgot because forgetting was easier. A woman in the back began to cry. Karen Dobbs. The librarian. I knew, she whispered. I saw the bruises once. I said nothing. Martha's expression softened. For a moment. Ron folded the letter. Looked at Charles. I should put you in cuffs. Charles laughed again. Low and bitter. If you can catch me. He turned to run. But Martha moved faster. Not with her hands. With her voice. Stop. And Charles stopped. As if the word itself held him. As if the years he spent hiding caught up in that single command. The crowd stood frozen. Martha stepped behind him. Reached into her dart case. She pulled out one more dart. Held it up. Let the silence stretch. This, she said. Is not for him. She turned. Faced the crowd. This is for me. Then she walked to the board. Raised her hand. And threw. Thud. The dart landed on the number 1. Not a bullseye. Not a perfect score. Just a reminder. Martha turned around. Eyes shining. Smile real this time. And she whispered. One step forward. That is all it takes. The crowd stood in stunned silence. Not because of the score on the board. But because they understood what it meant. Martha was not chasing perfection anymore. She was releasing something. Letting go. Charles still stood there, breathing heavily. But his swagger had vanished. What was left? Was a shell. Sheriff Ron stepped forward. He did not need his cuffs. He did not need force. Charles lowered his eyes. He knew it was over. Ron placed a firm hand on his shoulder. You have a lot to answer for. Charles did not resist. Did not speak. He simply nodded. As the sheriff led him out through the same door he had crashed through. Martha turned away. She sat down again. Slowly. Peacefully. Her hand trembled slightly. Not from fear. But from release. People began to move. Quietly. Uncertainly. Someone brought her a bottle of water. Someone else placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Whispers floated through the hall. I never knew. She was always so quiet. She carried that alone all these years? Tommy Vex sat slumped in his chair. Eyes wide. No trace of his former arrogance. Greg Thompson approached her. His voice quiet. Would you like to forfeit the next match? Martha looked up. And for the first time that night, she laughed. A soft, almost musical sound. It was not sharp. It was not bitter. It was light. No, Greg. I came here to play. The room shifted. Not with tension. But with something gentler. Respect. A ripple of applause began. First hesitant. Then steady. Not because she won. But because she stood. Because she threw. And refused to be silent anymore. Ron returned a few minutes later. Alone. Charles was gone. In custody. But before the next round could begin, he approached Martha once more. He leaned down. And quietly asked. Why tonight? Martha looked at him. Her eyes held storms and sunlight both. They were going to name the league trophy after him, she said. After everything. Ron stiffened. I did not know. She nodded. You were not supposed to. Then added. But now you do. He straightened. Touched the brim of his hat. And stepped back. Greg moved to the line. Ready. Shaken. But ready. Martha stood again. The host announced the match. Voice steadier now. Round 2. Martha Delaney. Versus Greg Thompson. No laughter. No jokes. Only silence. And the sound of redemption. Martha picked up her dart. Felt its weight. The weight of a story that was no longer just hers. She raised it. Took aim. And threw. Thud. This time. It landed just outside the center. Not perfect. But powerful. Behind her, someone whispered. She missed. Someone else replied. No. She chose not to hit the center. And at that moment, everyone understood. The perfect score was never the point. It was the throw. The courage to try again. Even when the past had tried to silence you. Greg stared at the board. Then at Martha. He had expected intimidation. Another flawless strike. Another moment to make him feel small. But this? This was something else. Something deeper. He stepped to the line. Gripped his dart. His hand was steady now. Not because he thought he could win. But because he finally understood what kind of game this was. He threw. Hit a modest score. No one cheered. But no one laughed either. Because the air had changed. This was no longer about winning. It was about witnessing. Martha's next throw hit a 17. Precise. Deliberate. She was not showing off anymore. She was showing up. Round after round. They played. Quietly. Respectfully. Outside, night settled in over Cedar Bluff. Inside, something else was settling too. Truth. Closure. And a strange kind of healing. Near the end of the match, Karen Dobbs approached the scorekeeper. "Give her the trophy," she said. "Even if she loses. She earned it years ago." The scorekeeper looked at her, then nodded. The host called the final scores. Greg had technically won the round. But no one noticed. No one cared. Greg turned to Martha. Offered his hand. "Thank you," he said. Voice tight. Eyes full. "For reminding all of us what strength really looks like." She shook his hand. "You played with heart," she said. "That is what matters." Then she stepped away. Not toward the door. Not toward the spotlight. Just forward. A single step. Then another. The sheriff walked beside her. "So, what happens now?" She smiled. That same soft smile from earlier. "Now? Now I live. Without fear. Without secrets." He nodded. Outside, the crickets had started singing. And the air smelled like spring. Someone inside called her name. They wanted a photo. But she did not turn around. Not yet. She walked out into the night. Into freedom. Into peace. And behind her, the dartboard stood quietly. Lit under flickering lights. With 3 darts still in its center. One red. One brass. One black. Each one telling a piece of a story that no one in Cedar Bluff would ever forget. Martha stood just outside the community center doors. The warm night breeze brushed against her face. It carried the sounds of laughter, conversation. But none of it weighed her down anymore. She looked up at the stars. They were clearer than she remembered. Or maybe, for the first time in years, she could finally see them without the fog of pain. Behind her, the tournament continued. Darts flew. People cheered. Life moved forward. But Martha? She had already won the only match that mattered. Not on the scoreboard. Not on the stage. Inside. Where scars had faded into strength. The past had tried to define her. Tried to silence her. But tonight, she rewrote the ending. She turned one last time to glance at the building. The scoreboard still displayed her name. Not just as a player, but as a survivor. A voice called softly from behind. "See you next year, Martha?" She smiled. Tucked her darts back into their worn wooden case. "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe someone else will step up next time." She stepped off the porch. Onto the sidewalk. And into a life no longer haunted by silence. Each step she took echoed with quiet power. A woman once mocked. Now remembered. Respected. Free. And as the lights of Cedar Bluff faded behind her, Martha Delaney vanished into the night. Not as a mystery. Not as a victim. But as a story no one would ever laugh at again.